There is something about Keanu Reeves that makes you stop and think about what it truly means to be a good person. In a world filled with noise and chaos, he moves through life with a quiet grace that feels almost rare. He does not seek attention for his kindness. He does not announce his generosity to the world. He simply lives in a way that reminds us all that fame does not have to change who you are at your core. When I first learned about his life, about the losses he has survived and the love he still carries, I felt something shift inside me. Here was a man who had every reason to become bitter, every reason to close his heart and hide from the world. But instead he chose softness. He chose kindness. He chose to keep believing in people even when life gave him reasons not to. That is why Keanu Reeves inspires me. Not because of the movies he has made or the characters he has played, but because of the human being he has chosen to become. And today I want to share a story with you that captures everything beautiful about who he is. The air in the studio felt different that evening. It was not something anyone could name or point to, but everyone felt it. The lights overhead hummed with their usual electric warmth, casting golden pools across the polished stage floor. Somewhere behind the curtains, a crew member laughed softly at a joke no one else heard, and the sound faded into the thick silence that followed. Keanu sat alone in the guest chair, his hands resting gently on his knees, his eyes focused on something far away that only he could see. There was a stillness about him that made people pause. It was not nervousness. It was not boredom. It was something deeper, something that lived in the space between breaths. The audience had not yet settled into their seats, but already the room seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for something it could not yet understand. He had done thousands of interviews over the course of his career. He had answered questions about his movies, his motorcycles, his philosophy on life. But tonight felt different in a way he could not explain. Maybe it was the way the host had smiled a little too wide during their brief meeting backstage. Maybe it was the strange energy buzzing through the production team, the way they whispered and glanced in his direction when they thought he was not looking. Keanu had learned to trust his instincts over the years. Life had taught him that lesson through grief and loss and moments of profound darkness. And right now, his instincts were telling him to be careful. The interview began smoothly enough. They talked about his latest project, a film that explored themes of redemption and second chances. They discussed the books he had been reading, the quiet joys of riding motorcycles through empty desert roads, the simple pleasure of creating art with people he loved. Keanu answered each question with his usual thoughtful honesty, taking his time to find the right words, never rushing to fill the silence. The audience seemed charmed by him, laughing at his gentle humor, leaning forward when he spoke about the things that mattered most to him. And then the host leaned forward with a different kind of smile. It was sharper somehow, hungrier. The question came wrapped in casual words, but Keanu recognized the trap immediately. The host mentioned Sandra Bullock, his friend of over 30 years, the woman he had worked with on a film that had made them both household names. He mentioned Alexandra Grant, the artist who had become his partner, the woman who had helped him learn to love again after so many years of grief. And then he asked the question that was designed to create conflict, to force Keanu into an impossible choice, to generate the kind of dramatic moment that would spread across the internet like wildfire. Who means more to you? If you could only save one, who would it be? Choose. The studio fell completely silent. Cameras zoomed in on Keanu's face, searching for cracks in his composure, waiting for the moment of discomfort that would make for perfect television. The audience held their breath, some leaning forward with anticipation, others shifting uncomfortably in their seats. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for without knowing they were waiting for it. This was the viral clip that would be shared millions of times, analyzed and debated and dissected by strangers who thought they understood what was happening. But Keanu did not react the way anyone expected. He sat in the silence for a long moment, and his expression was not one of panic or confusion. It was something closer to sadness. Not sadness for himself, but sadness for the question itself, for the assumption behind it, for the way we have been taught to believe that love is a competition with winners and losers. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft and steady. He asked if he could tell a story instead of giving a simple answer. The host, caught off guard by the unexpected response, nodded without thinking. Keanu began to speak about loss. He talked about the people he had loved and lost over the years, the friends who had left too soon, the dreams that had shattered before they could take shape. He did not name names or share private details. He simply spoke about what it means to carry grief while still choosing to live, to hold on to the memory of those who are gone while still making room for those who remain. His words painted a picture of a man who had walked through darkness and somehow found his way back to the light. And then he said something that changed everything. He said that the human heart is not a tournament bracket. It is not a competition where we rank the people we love and eliminate them one by one until only a single winner remains. Love does not work that way. The heart expands to hold everyone who matters, and loving one person deeply does not mean loving another person less. His friendship with Sandra, built over 3 decades of shared laughter and quiet support and showing up for each other in moments of need, did not compete with his partnership with Alexandra. They were different kinds of love, living in different rooms of his heart, and both of them were real and true and precious. The audience began to shift. Something was changing in the room. The hunger for drama was being replaced by something else, something softer and more human. Keanu continued speaking. He talked about how questions like the one he had been asked were designed to create cruelty disguised as entertainment. They forced people to diminish one relationship in order to honor another. They manufactured conflict where none existed. They reduced real human beings with real feelings to options in a game designed to generate clicks and views and comments. And then he said something directly to the millions of people watching from their homes. He acknowledged the ones who had been hoping he would choose Sandra, the ones who had spent years imagining a romance that never happened. He acknowledged the ones who had been hoping he would choose Alexandra, the ones who wanted to believe in the power of finding love later in life. And he told them that both of those hopes came from a beautiful place, a deep human longing to believe in connection and love and the possibility that loneliness is not permanent. But he refused to choose. He refused to play the game. He refused to pretend that his heart was smaller than it actually was. Something unexpected happened next. The studio door opened and 2 women walked in together. Sandra Bullock and Alexandra Grant, side by side, their faces showing a mix of nervousness and determination. They had been watching from backstage. They had planned this moment for weeks. And now they were taking control of a narrative that had been designed to pit them against each other. Sandra took the microphone first. She told a story about Keanu from decades ago, about a time he had secretly arranged a special dinner for her simply because she had mentioned once that she had never tried a particular dish. He had done it anonymously. He had never taken credit. She only discovered the truth years later. That was who he was, she said. A man who did kind things not for recognition but because kindness was his natural language. She spoke about their friendship, about the years of supporting each other through triumphs and heartbreaks, about the crush they had both secretly harbored when they were young and too scared to act on it. And then she said something remarkable. She said that when she learned Keanu had finally allowed himself to love again, she did not feel jealous. She felt relieved. She felt grateful. Because someone she cared about deeply was finally letting himself be happy. Alexandra spoke next. She talked about falling in love with Keanu slowly over years of creative collaboration, about learning the depth of his losses and being amazed that he had remained so open and gentle despite everything he had survived. She talked about Sandra with warmth and genuine affection, acknowledging that the 2 of them had become real friends, that they had chosen sisterhood over rivalry, connection over competition. And then the two women did something that would be replayed millions of times in the days that followed. They embraced. Not the polite and distant hug of celebrities performing for cameras, but a real and meaningful embrace between two people who had chosen to see each other as allies instead of enemies. Keanu watched them with tears in his eyes. And for the first time in as long as anyone could remember, he did not try to hide his emotions. The host, who had started the evening looking for drama and conflict, found himself transformed by what he was witnessing. He apologized publicly for the question he had asked. He admitted that his career had been built on creating uncomfortable moments and searching for weakness in his guests. But tonight, he said, something had broken open inside him. Something had changed. A young woman in the audience raised her hand and asked if she could speak. She stood up with tears streaming down her face and talked about her own life, about her father who had left when she was young and her stepfather who had loved her despite her years of pushing him away. She had always believed that loving her stepfather meant betraying her father, that there was only so much love to go around and she had to protect it carefully. But listening to Keanu talk about the infinite nature of love had changed something inside her. She was going to call her stepfather. She was going to tell him she was sorry. Keanu walked to the edge of the stage and took her hand. He told her that her anger had not been wrong. She had been protecting herself. She had been surviving. But surviving is not the same as living, and it sounded like she was finally ready to start living. The evening ended not with a host's clever sign-off but with something far more meaningful. Keanu stood with Sandra and Alexandra on either side of him, connected to both, diminishing neither. He spoke directly to everyone watching about the myth that love is scarce, that we must be ruthless about who we allow into our hearts, that choosing one person means rejecting everyone else. The truth, he said, is different. The heart expands. The more love we give, the more we have. The more people we allow in, the larger we become. The interview went viral, but not in the way anyone expected. It was not a clip of conflict or drama that spread across the world. It was the image of two women embracing who could have been rivals. It was the sight of a man crying openly because he was overwhelmed by love. It was the sound of a young woman deciding to heal a relationship she had thought was beyond repair. Within days, a movement had begun. People everywhere were sharing stories of choosing connection over competition. They were reaching out to estranged family members. They were embracing their partner's friends instead of seeing them as threats. They were learning that kindness is not a weakness but a strength that takes more courage than cruelty ever could. This story matters because it reminds us of something we often forget. We live in a world that constantly asks us to choose, to rank, to compare, to compete. We are told that there is not enough love or success or happiness to go around, that we must fight for our share and guard it jealously against anyone who might take it from us. But that story is a lie. It is a lie that keeps us small and scared and separate from each other. The truth is that we do not have to shrink to make others comfortable. We do not have to choose between the people who matter to us. We do not have to diminish one love to make room for another. Our hearts are bigger than we have been taught to believe, and they can hold more than we ever imagined possible. Keanu Reeves has lived through losses that would have broken many people. He has experienced grief so profound that it would have been easy for him to close his heart and never risk loving again. But he made a different choice. He chose to stay open. He chose to keep believing in people. He chose to lead with kindness even when the world did not always show him kindness in return. And that choice, made again and again over the course of a lifetime, is what makes him truly remarkable. Not his fame or his fortune or his action movies, but his stubborn insistence on remaining soft in a world that often rewards hardness. His quiet determination to treat every person he meets with dignity and respect. His willingness to cry openly, to admit when he does not have the answers, to hold a stranger's hand when they are hurting. We can all learn from this. We can all choose kindness over cruelty. We can all choose connection over competition. We can all choose to believe that love expands rather than diminishes when we share it freely. And in making those choices day after day, we can become the kind of people who make the world a little bit better simply by being in it. So the next time someone asks you to choose between people you love, remember this story. Remember that you do not have to play that game. Remember that your heart is bigger than any question designed to make it smaller. And remember that the most powerful thing you can do in a world that profits from division is to simply refuse to be divided. Be kind. Be open. Be brave enough to love without limits. That is the lesson Keanu Reeves teaches us, not through his words but through his life. And it is a lesson worth carrying with us always.